Hi, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of JoyBaking.com. Today we're going to make a vanilla sheet cake, and this is what it looks like. This is a moist vanilla flavored butter cake that we're going to cover with this deliciously tangy sweet cream cheese frosting. So the first thing that you need to do is to preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 180 degrees Celsius. And then you will need a 9 by 13 inch, which is 23 by 33 centimeter baking pan. And now you could spray the pan with a non-stick vegetable spray, or what I'm going to do is I'm going to brush it with some butter. So what I did is just melt a little bit of butter, and then with the pastry brush, and brush the bottom and the sides. Make sure you get into the corners. We don't want our cake sticking to our pan. Okay. And then to make doubly sure that our cake doesn't stick to the bottom, I'm going to line it with a piece of parchment paper. Okay. So now, for our batter, if you have a stand mixer, use your paddle attachment, or you could use a hand mixer for this. The first thing you will need is 1 cup, 225 grams of butter. Have your butter at room temperature. I like to use unsalted butter because I prefer the flavor, and I also like to control the amount of salt in my cake batter. But if you have a favorite salted butter that you like to use, then go ahead and use it. So what I'm going to do now is just beat my butter on like medium speed just until it's nice and creamy. Okay, give that a scrape. Whenever you're making a batter, periodically stop and scrape both the sides and the bottom of your mixing bowl. We want to make sure everything gets mixed together. So now, I'm going to add 1.5 cups, 300 grams of granulated white sugar, along with 2.5 teaspoons, 10 grams of pure vanilla extract. You could also use the pure vanilla bean paste if you'd like. And so now I'm going to beat this on medium-high speed. We want to get everything mixed together. We want to get some air into our batter. So I'm going to say, and then you want it to become nice and light and fluffy. So that's going to take, depending on your mixer, 3, maybe up to 5 minutes. Okay, so we're done. So you can see it's lightened in color, nice and light and fluffy. So that's what you're looking for. So now what we're going to do is add 4 large eggs, which is 200 grams of eggs. And you want your eggs at room temperature. And I'm going to add 1 egg at a time, beat that in on medium speed, and then add the next one, and so on. Okay, so let's give a scrape here. So now, what you will need is 1 cup, which is 240 milliliters of milk. Now you could use a full fat, a whole milk, or you could use a 2% reduced fat. I wouldn't use the skim milk here. We do need some fat in our milk to give us that nice rich flavor to our cake. So have that, and then I have a large bowl, and you will need, I have a strainer. If you have a sifter, you could use that. 2 3/4 cups, which is 355 grams of all-purpose flour. You may know that as plain flour, and I'm going to put that. And to that, I'm going to add 1 tablespoon, 11 grams of baking powder, and 1/2 teaspoon, 2 grams of salt. And then we want to sift that together. Sifting not only mixes the baking powder and the salt into the flour, but it also aerates our flour, which helps, to get a nice light cake. There we go. So now what we're going to do is we're going to alternate alternate between the flour and the milk. So I'm going to add the flour in 3 additions and alternate that with the milk in 2. Because if you added all of these together at once, we'd be mixing for a long time, which we don't want to do. We only want to mix here as long as to get the ingredients mixed in. So take about, you know, about 1/3 of your flour. Just going to eyeball that. And then have your mixer on low speed. You don't want that coming up in your face. And we just want to mix it in. Okay. And then I'm going to add about half the milk. And I'm just going to eyeball it. Okay, add a little more of the flour. Just going to give that a quick scrape here. Okay, and the rest of our milk. And the final bit of flour. Okay. Looks good. Move this out of the way. Don't forget to scrape your beaters. And now I do have a little bit of flour on the side, so I'm just going to mix that in by hand. Let's get to the bottom of the bowl. And we're done. Not too bad. So just pour it in. So just for reference, this is what you would call a vanilla flavored butter cake. And what we used, the way we mix this is called the creaming method. So just you can take the back of a spoon, or I have an offset spatula, and we just want to spread it out as evenly as possible. Make sure you get in the corners. Okay, that looks pretty good. So now, everyone's oven is a little different. So I'm going to say about 35 minutes. But I would start checking probably at 30, because we do not want to overbake our cake, because if you overbake it, it'll be a little dry, and nobody likes a dry cake. But there's other things to look for besides time. What we're looking for is the cake will rise. It'll become a beautiful, light golden brown. If you touch it in the center, it'll kind of, it'll be firm but bounce back. And what you will also notice is the cake will just start just start pulling away from the sides of the pan. So look for all of those things, but I'm saying about 35 minutes. And I do like to rotate the cake front to back about halfway through to get even baking. So our vanilla sheet cake is done. Beautiful golden brown color. If I touch it, it's firm, springs back. And I don't know whether you can see this, but it's just starting to pull away from the sides of the pan. And of course, a toothpick inserted into the center comes out clean. So now put your pan on a wire rack. We're going to let this cool 10, 15 minutes in the pan. And then when we come back, we will take it out of the pan. So now, to take our cake out of the pan, first, have a wire rack, and then what I like to do is just brush it with a little bit of melted butter. You could spray it with a nonstick spray, because the cake is still a little warm and we don't want it to stick to our wire rack. And then, just take a knife, offset spatula, just make sure it's not sticking. So, and then take your wire rack, turn it upside down. It's heavy. And there we go. And hopefully it'll come off. Go. And then just peel slowly. There we go. And then I want to flip it over so the top is facing up. So again, I'm just going to, because as this cools, if you didn't brush your wire rack, what you may find is you leave part of your cake on the rack, which is not what we want. So let's see if I can do this. There we go. So now what we want to do is let this cool completely. And then, personally, I don't like to frost the cake like a freshly baked cake. I find that when you put the frosting on, it tends to, you end up with a little cake in the frosting. So what I'm going to do is, once this cools completely, I'm going to take my spatula. What I have here is just a baking sheet. I've lined it with some parchment paper. I'm going to put it on there, wrap it in plastic, and put it into the refrigerator to chill until it's firm. A few hours, or really what I tend to do is leave it overnight, and then it'd be nice and cold, nice and firm, much easier to frost. So that's what I'm going to do, and then when we come back, we will make our cream cheese frosting. Now we will make our cream cheese frosting. Again, if you have a stand mixer, use your paddle attachment, or you could use a hand mixer for this. The first thing you will need is 7 tablespoons, 100 grams of butter. Have your butter at room temperature. And I'm just going to beat it on medium speed, just until it's nice and smooth. Okay, that's great. And next you will need 1.5 cups, which is 180 grams of confectioner's sugar. You may know that as powdered or icing sugar. I do like to sift it first because it tends to have lumps. I'm just using a strainer. If you have a sifter, you could use that. And then just add that. Get it all in there. So now what we're going to do, I'm going to start on slow speed and then increase it once it's mixed all together. You don't want that sugar coming up in your face. I'm going to mix it on medium-high speed until it's really nice and light and fluffy. So that's going to take quite a few minutes. Okay, so this is what you're looking for. We want to incorporate a lot of air into this, and that's going to make our frosting nice and light and fluffy. So scrape that down. And now for flavoring, I'm going to beat in 1 teaspoon, 4 grams of pure vanilla extract, and 1 teaspoon, 4 grams of freshly squeezed lemon juice. The lemon juice is just going to perk up all the flavors. I'm just going to beat that in. And now, you need some cream cheese. You will need 12 ounces, 340 grams of the regular full-fat cream cheese, and you want it really soft. I mean, I left this out for probably a good hour, as you can see. And I'm going to just put in a little at a time, and then beat that in, and then continue on until it's all incorporated. And a little more. You want to beat it in until there's no lumps also. You don't want a lumpy frosting. Okay, so I've incorporated all of our cream cheese. At this point, I'm not going to bother, but if you wanted to color your frosting, you could now add a little food coloring. Good scrape. So this is what you're looking for, nice and soft and fluffy and nice and smooth. Okay, so that is our frosting. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to clean this up and set up, and when we come back, we will frost our cake. So we are now ready to frost our cake. So I took the cake out of the refrigerator, and then what I like to do is just brush off any loose crumbs. That way we won't get them into the frosting when we're frosting the cake. Of course, you could do a crumb coat, which that means just put a light coating of frosting, refrigerate it, and then do the final coat. I don't want to mess with that, so I'm just doing one coat. So what I have is a large spatula here, and I'm going to transfer onto, now I like to use these cardboard cake boards, they're called. You could, if you don't have one of these, you can buy them online or cake decorating stores. You could just use a serving platter, whatever you have. I like to use, especially the cardboard cake are good if you're taking it to, you know, giving it away or taking it to a function. It's kind of easier. So there we have. And then if you have a turntable, which you don't really need here, but it does make it a little easier. Let's put that on there. And then we're just going to frost the cake. And it just spread it on. Nothing fancy here. I do like to just kind of put blobs all over, makes it a little easier. Okay. And then you could either use you could just use the back of a spoon or a knife. Now, it's different types of spatulas. You get the flat and you get the offset, whichever one you want to use. For the top, I like to use a long one. Now, if you want, you can just frost the top of the cake, or you can do the sides. I'll leave that up to you. But today, I think I'm going to do both the top and the sides. So first, spread it. And then I'm going to just use my offset spatula to just take it down and do the sides. Okay, looks good. Now you can do it smooth. You can make squiggles, do round circles, whatever you'd like. Okay, I'm happy with that. And now you have this blank slate. What do you want to do with it? Candles. You could put fresh fruits, some berries. Fresh berries would be nice. You could, I'm doing some sprinkles. You could do some like those big flakes of dried coconut would be nice. I mean, really? Or fresh flowers. That would be a nice thing, depending on the occasion. But I'm just going to do some sprinkles. Who doesn't like sprinkles? What's great about this cake is if you store it in the refrigerator, I find it lasts 5 days. I mean, it really is a long-lasting cake. Now, I do like to bring it to room temperature. I find, you know, a butter cake is, the texture is best at room temperature. But for storing, it stores much longer. So now, we will cut a piece. If you need to, just wipe your knife and some paper towel between cuts. And get my plate here. Whoa. Whoa. And there we go. There's our, you can see, very nice white butter cake with a cream cheese frosting. It's, you know, what the occasion, birthdays, if you had like a bake sale, just because you want to make a cake. But for a large gathering, this is a, you know, this will feed like at least, say, 14 people, depending how big the pieces are. But, you know, probably a lot more than that. You know, when you look at that cake, it can be deceiving because the flavor is there. I mean, a butter cake gives you a more dense texture than, say, a sponge cake, but with that butter, it has this wonderful butter flavor and nice vanilla, just enough vanilla. And then, of course, the cream cheese frosting, the tanginess, goes perfectly with a butter cake. You have to try this. And until next time, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of JoyBaking.com.